to introduce Representative Kirsten Harris, Talley, KHT, as we know and love. And honestly, please give us your response to what you've heard today at the State of Africatown, 8th Annual State of Africatown.
And I want to thank Africatown for inviting me today. And I'm thinking of my comments less as a response and more as a reflection of accountability to everything that's been presented here today. I kept reflecting today how wonderful it is that you all found a way for us to gather online from the safety of our homes. Of course, we know that the pandemic in this moment has elevated the dual pandemics that we experience as Black people with COVID-19, of also experiencing the response to that in our Black bodies and what it is to have racism in every system in that. So appreciate that you all found a way to gather us for this 8th annual event while we're staying safe at home with our families. And want to thank every person who spoke today. I've had the pleasure of sitting in reflection since 10 a.m. when we started the day together today to really hear what is happening. I had the pleasure last summer of walking with so many folks in marches all of last summer to bring forward and make possible so much of what has been shared today about the pressure that community and those of us who stand shoulder to shoulder with community have been able to bring forward as assurances from decision makers that they're going to be responsive to our needs, and what it is to continue that work and keep us accountable to you is so important. I really work to hit the ground running. I've only been in the job as you're representing you on the state level as your state legislature in the 37th since January 11th. We're coming up on the end of only 6 weeks of the work. But I immediately, upon learning that I'd been elevated and elected to this position last November, immediately met with community to talk through how are we going to come in to this work? What is it that we need to elevate? Whose voices need to be heard? And how will we keep that moving? That started over the summer with conversations with the governor's office around the vision of Black land acquisition and Black ownership, and what it is to move away from ideas that government ownership and providing access to Black people was enough, but that we have to invest in Black community ownership and on all levels, whether that's the place you live or the business you steward and provide for our community. And I was glad to see that those conversations that we had with the governor's office over the summer elevated $13 million for a lot of that work, including the purchase and development of the Kiro Center, which is, part of the vision of what it is to expand the places that we have elders and others have affordability in housing so that they can stay in place where they are. And I also want to reflect on all the conversations today about how small businesses are continuing to adjust and grow in this moment, about how folks are continuing to build the vision for our children, despite what our education system has put in our way, to continue to inspire and elevate their brilliance, what it is to do that with youth voice and elders together, stewarding that so that we can build off the legacy of what elders have built before us, and also listen to the vision of what is possible from this moment forward and into the future from the young people who are directly impacted, and quite frankly have some really savvy, sophisticated ways in which they're thinking about building community power as well. And I love Africatown for being a place where those bridges are always together, that people can meet on and bridge that work. For me, the considerations on the state level is that we get to do 3 things at the state level. And in my role, I've really been working to steward those 3 things. We can build really good policy that actually responds to the needs of Black people and addresses, quite frankly, the racism in so much of our policy and approaches with an anti-racist lens to undo those harms with good laws. But also part of our job that's often unseen is standing in the way of bad laws that could surface and find their way being passed and find their way onto the books. Really so much of what the Black Members Caucus, I am proud to have walked in with 5 new Black members in our state legislature. We now have Senator Tawana Nobles as the only Black voice in the Senate, but also now we have 8 Black folks, for the first time, the largest coalition of Black legislative voices we've had ever in our legislature. But I never forget that for the history of what it is to be at the state legislature for our state, the very first assembly of the Washington State Legislature included Representative Bush, which means there have been literally Black voices as part of our legislature since the beginning. But with the 9 of us representing you all now, we are 9 legislators of only 25 since that first assembly in 1889 who have been allowed to represent you. So it means a lot to have our Black member caucus now giving voice to what policies we're going to elevate and which ones we're going to stand in the way of that harm our communities. What you've seen at the state level is a whole set of conversations that we've never really had robustly at the state level before. And so many folks here today have been stewarding these conversations on the city level and county level, but we have not had the bold policing justice conversations at the state level that we should have been having, but we're having them this session. I was proud to co-sponsor with Representative Jesse Johnson from the 30th, a community oversight bill. Council member Zay Halai, who spoke earlier today, also came and gave testimony on that bill. It allows us to construct civilian oversight over police proceedings and police forces, including sheriff's offices throughout the state. It is a policy that's been beyond needed, and that was led with Black folks from throughout the state to create the policy and steward it. I think it has a lot of viability. I encourage folks here to continue to watch that bill. It has moved out of appropriations into rules, which means we now need to make sure that it moves from rules onto the floor and that we vote it out of the House and continue to ask our senatorial colleagues in the other chamber to also support that work. We also have a lot of policy centered on juvenile justice. We have 8 facilities at the state level for juvenile incarceration. We are working with leaders in the Black Lives Matter movement throughout the state to close as many of those facilities as possible and move away from those incarceration systems. Right now, there's a bridge work happening there to move to electronic monitoring systems. But what I need you to know, and what many of us know, is that that is just a bridge, because we do not want to move into a system where we are still incarcerating youth in their own communities and homes with electronic monitoring. What we need is to move totally to no incarceration of youth. And so that's a bridge piece as we continue to work to close as many of those facilities as possible as quickly as we can. But I have also written a proviso and will be continuing to do work for us to move away from electronic monitoring at all as a quote unquote solution to policing. It's not a solution. It's an extension of the new Jim Crow, and we need to keep an eye on making sure that that does not be being used as a way to reduce costs but increase our incarceration system. So we'll be continuing to work with community partners on that work. But the other piece I want to talk about is this crisis of housing and affordability. Our upside down tax code is also a racist tax code. It's a tax code that is set up to keep those of us who have built up these communities because of restrictions and covenants and red lines and are now being forced out of these communities from having our say and for carrying most of the tax burden in the state. And while so many of the wealth, literally of the largest wealth in the world, is here in our backyard, and they're not paying their fair share, it means that we're paying almost 18% for what it is to be taxed in this state, while rich people who make up the upper 2% of our state pay only 3%. We're paying 6 times as much as they are. And all of our systems are dependent on that revenue. And then they come back and tell us that they don't have enough money to invest in our communities because of this upside down tax code. We need to get it right side up, and we need the folks with wealth to pay their share and to relieve the tax burden that we carry. For that reason, I've brought forward Bill 1494. It's an anti-displacement property tax exemption that would exempt up to $250,000 off the assessed value of whatever home you live in. Because I know what I saw in 2006, 7, 8, and 9 was the accelerated pushing out of Black people and elders out of the Central District and our communities that we have built. And I continue to see us being pushed further and further south. I am proud to be in a district where I get to represent now the epicenter of the largest concentration of Black families in Skyway, but I know that used to be the Central District. And I know that that's a reflection of the trend of gentrification that's happening because of displacement out of people's homes. And if we can give folks relief with their property taxes so they can stay in the homes that they raise their children in, our elders can stay in the homes that they've paid off and still find themselves struggling with those property taxes, that's what's really going to start addressing this crisis of the upside down tax code and the crisis of folks being displaced from our communities. So I want you all to know that I will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with community. I will continue to steward this community vision that you all have built. I am still learning these tools that we get to wield. And in every opportunity I have, I will bring those tools to you all so that we know how to wield them together. And I appreciate this place to hear from you, to hear what you already are building. It's beautiful. I know that we have so much that's put upon us, and this is a space where it is clear every year that we have the tools to thrive on the other side of it and that we're building them ourselves. So I just have such deep gratitude for the invitation today, for the reflection to your words by King, which I know is built with the words of all in community who built this day and are building the work. And I look forward to continuing to doing this work with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kirsten Harris Talley. We so appreciate what you've uplifted today. I see folks in the chat learning about the bills that are out there. It is so important that we're engaged. We appreciate you in these 6 weeks already stepping up to the plate of what it really means to not only be one of our elected officials, but to continue to stay connected to the work that's happening on the ground, so that can inform how you move there in those spaces in Olympia, or maybe virtually for now. But we so appreciate what you said and your presence here today. Thank you.